All right, so as we just talked about, people learned to farm, and that farming led to what? People staying in one place. And because they're staying in one place, this gives rise to civilizations, which ultimately is going to give birth to these continents on the screen: North America, South America, Africa, Europe, Asia, Australia. All right, so we are talking about civilizations, but first of all, what is a civilization? Is that just simply a city, a town? Can this classroom be a civilization? No. It has to have 8 major features. So first of all, it has to have the cities have to be advanced, meaning they have to have basically the things that are going to follow suit. So government, religion, they have to have architecture and artisans who are building major buildings. So that's the first thing they have to have. The second thing, they have to have an organized government. So as people are coming together in these major cities, we need someone to rule over that. So initially it was priests, but eventually as wars broke out, it became warrior kings. Next, you need to have complex religions. So most of these were polytheistic, meaning they served more than one god. Poly meaning many. So you have to have advanced and complex religions, not just we're going to worship the sun and that's it. It has to be complex. All right, so the fourth thing you need to be considered a civilization, you have to have job specialization. So that means everybody's not just a farmer anymore. We've got farming taken care of because farmers are able to create this surplus of food. And so you have to ignore my baby. So now that we have a surplus of food, everybody doesn't have to farm. So now people can specialize in things. So for example, artisans can then make different crafts. They can make jewelry. They can build buildings. They can actually make art. They can do a multitude of things. All right, number 5, you have to have social classes, meaning who's at the top of society and who's at the bottom. Whether you know it or not, we have social classes in this school in America, and we'll talk about those during one of your questions during one of our morning meetings. But just so you know, our social classes are lower class, middle class, and upper class. But back in the day, the social classes were priests and religious officials and kings. They would be at the top. In the middle would be merchants and artisans, and at the bottom would be farmers, and at the absolute bottom would usually be slaves. All right, the 6th thing you have to have is arts and architecture. So you have to be building things. Your civilization has to have complex buildings that artisans have put together. So you see some pictures on the screen of architecture as well as art. So who's making the jewelry? Who's making the artwork, the music, etc. And the 8th thing you have to have is public works. So public works would be like irrigation. How is the water being filtered in your city? Dams. So a dam is used to stop the water if it's overflowing. Public works today would be the people who manage our roads, the people who mow the lawns around the city. All of that is public works, and that has to be a part of your civilization, or that is a component that you have to be considered a civilization. The last thing is writing. So you have to have some form of writing, and this was mainly done by scribes, people who went to school specifically to learn writing. Writing started with pictographs. So you see the picture here where they are showcasing these pictures that represent a word or a thought. And eventually it changed and gravitated into modern language. So 8 things you have to be considered a civilization. All right, here's your critical thinking question. Why can't this classroom be considered a civilization? Or can it? While some people were settling into cities, others raised domesticated animals but did not develop agriculture. So they remained on the move. They were known as pastoralists. Wandering herders these people wandered around herding animals. They tended sheep, goats, camels, or other animals. These herders moved their animals to new pastures and watering places. In moving with their herds, they spread information about other groups and developments in technology. Pastoralists emerged in parts of Africa, Europe, and Asia around the same time as the Neolithic Revolution. Now, pastoralists are slightly different from nomads because nomads are roaming around looking for animals and fruits and veggies. A pastoralist is herding animals and then moving them around. The Bronze Age refers to a time when people began to use bronze rather than copper and stone to fashion tools and weapons. The Bronze Age started in Sumer around 3000 BC, but the date varied in other parts in Asia and in Europe. Bronze was expensive and therefore used only by kings, priests, and soldiers. Bronze is an alloy of tin and copper. With bronze, you could mold it into any shape you wanted, and it was much harder than a rock like flint. People also had to mine tin and copper, and therefore they had to venture out of the cities in search of these metals. It is here where they may have discovered new civilizations, and instead of mining the metal, they could trade with them. Civilizations learn from each other. They took the best ideas from each other in what is called cultural diffusion. They spread three things: ideas, customs, and technology. So cultural diffusion happens in a multitude of ways. 1, people migrate, move around. 2, trade, because those merchants are moving around and so they share these new ideas. 3, in warfare, because either the people who win force their ideas on the people they conquer, or they just adopt them naturally. Critical thinking question: what is the most important feature or characteristic of a civilization and why? This has to be in a complete sentence, so I gave you a sentence starter. The most important feature was blank because blank. The most important feature was blank because blank. So look at your 8 characteristics and tell me which one do you think is most important to a civilization, and then tell me why. Quick reminder, your photo release, I know this says parent survey, but ignore that. Your photo release is due on September 1st. That's the last day to turn it in. Remember, you do get a prize. If you are done with your notes, make sure that you have your name and period on your paper. Place your completed notes in the turn in bin and move on to your activity.